One of the most important things, or to me, the most important thing that Krishnamurti talks about is die to yourself. So I think a lot of people don't quite understand what he means by that. He often, like, obviously it's not about suicide, it's not about actually dying, but he talks about death all the time. And that's because death is the most important aspect of this. First of all, you need to realize that you are mortal, so death is a real thing. Death is a thing that's going to happen to you. Many people die sooner rather than later. Many people die unprepared. Many people die suddenly, accidentally. So, like in the book, I remember writing about memento mori. So as a goth, when I used to have my goth teenage phase, I came across a Latin phrase that said memento mori. So that means remember death. And as a teenager, I sort of thought that was like remember you're gonna die. Like, you're gonna die. Like, it's a threat. Like, you will die. And the worst thing that could ever happen to you is gonna happen to you. You will die. That's how I used to understand it. Now, via Krishnamurti, I understand it very differently. So, memento mori means remember death or remember death. So, to me, it's sort of the same thing that Krishnamurti is saying. So he's saying die to yourself. First of all, realizing that you're mortal and that tomorrow could be over. Completely comprehending our human mortality. Completely understanding that I could just get hit by a bus right now. There's no tomorrow, there's no future, there's nothing. It's about you completely understanding that you are alive right now. And it could just be over just like that. It's like a snap thing and someone dies. So I don't know how many people have died in your life, but unfortunately death is a completely normal occurrence. So many of my friends have died. Many people are going to die close to me. Like, I was quite young when the first people in my, like, the first person that I knew who died, I think I was about 17 when he died, so he was very close to me. And as I was trying to deal with his death, it was like the biggest tragedy, and like it felt like the world stopped turning. It felt like everything has changed in my life. It was a complete devastating loss to me at that moment in time. And then the next person died, devastating loss again. And then as time went on, obviously you get used to people dying. And unfortunately, like, I've had people die, like my friends died from the stupidest things, like, shocking, sad, like, I'm talking about heroin overdoses, I'm talking about avalanches, car accidents, so like, all like very dramatic, scary stuff every time. And while you could drag yourself in misery, you can narrate this in a sad way and always remind yourself of the death and always drag this weight of the death with you. You could also see their death as a valuable lesson for you in your life. So you being able to see that this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to die like this. This is real life. I know people don't want to talk about it. I know people would like to pretend that death is not a real thing or it's not going to happen to us, but it is. And this is an important thing to understand. So it's not until I completely accept my mortality, as soon as I understand that I will die, that's when you completely understand what it's like to live. So it makes you appreciate your life a little bit more, a lot more. So I did actually see a dead body, and it was shocking, it was a horrible situation, but seeing the dead body, seeing the person that I just saw alive and well, deceased, he was really dead. And in my mind, all I could think of is him alive, and then I looked at his body. And then I thought about him alive and how vital and excited and jolly he was. And then I looked at his dead body and I it was like the weirdest thing. Like I just went, but how is this possible? I just saw him and like he was alive and now he's dead. And so being faced with this, so being faced with death so directly, completely just, it felt like life was taking me and bitch slapping me and saying, live right now, because it will be over sooner than you think. And the person who I found dead, he had no idea he was going to die. He didn't think he was going to die. He wasn't acting like he was going to die. It completely caught him off guard. And that's exactly what I witnessed, what I saw, and what I then realized. I do not want to be caught off guard. I'm going to live every day to my fullest and as hard as I possibly can. If I've got MS, if I've got... It doesn't matter. This day, today, feels like the last day that I'll ever live on this earth. And this is what Krishnamurti is really talking about. Completely understanding that all these things that we're thinking about, all these dramas and, I don't know, romance gone wrong, or, I don't know, slighted your authority or disrespect or whatever. All these things are so little, so unimportant, so irrelevant, because all that matters is that you're alive right now and you live your life right now. That's all. That's all you need to do. And so this is like the first part of death that Krishnamurti is basically speaking about. He doesn't say it in two different ways, but it's implied, die to yourself. So death. So what he is trying to say, excuse me, so when he says die to yourself, he means that you look at your life, you understand that death is a real possibility right now, and you look at your life and all the drama that you dragged on from that day, or the drama or the whatever, you look at it and you end it in your mind. So that means, for instance, if I had a fight with my flatmate and it's stressing me out in my head, then I look at it in my mind. I look at what is, so not what is being said, what do I have to believe, not what do I think, but just look at the facts. Like, for instance, they ate my pumpkin. So I can look at the facts. I go like, okay, I had a pumpkin, the pumpkin is gone, and my flatmate ate it. So what am I going to do about it? Okay, tomorrow I'm going to speak to them about it, or it doesn't really matter because I didn't want it anyway, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Whatever issue it is, you don't really need to, like, it's not about resolving it. It's about accepting what is. So in my mind, I have to go, okay, I had a pumpkin in there. My flatmate wanted to eat it, so they ate it. Is that a big deal? No. Can I live with the fact that I don't have the pumpkin anymore? Yes. So that's more or less, that's all that it is. Looking at it, looking at the theory or the tragedy or whatever drama, looking at it and ending it. So mostly because you're humble, you're not upset that something got taken or stolen. You just look at, so in that situation, I would have to go, okay, either my flatmate wanted the pumpkin or the flatmate stole the pumpkin. I don't know what my hypothetical version of it is. Either way, it doesn't really make any difference. Like, you don't feel like you need to avenge it, or you don't feel any bitterness or anger or whatever. It's not that important. So it's just the fact that you need to accept. So, i.e., my pumpkin is gone. That's it. So because there's no ego, you don't care about like, oh, they shouldn't have done this to me, or how did I deserve this? That's all ego. So that's why life is so much easier without the ego. And Krishnamurti says like die to yourself every day. So I don't necessarily think that I make like a practice out of every day before I go to bed. I die to myself, because you don't have an ego. There's not really much being accumulated anyway. But basically what he means die to yourself is, in your mind you need to give up everything. So the dramas, the love, the possessions, whatever. So whatever you have or think you have or think you own, you give up. So you die to yourself. And the most important aspect of that is obviously not the materialistic things. It's more the ego. So if I say, Mr. B lied to me, if I have an ego, I will drag this on and go like, why would they lie to me, and why do I deserve this? I never lied to them, blah blah blah. That's all ego. So that needs to end. And so any slight, any arguments, whatever happened during the day, you don't just keep it as a stored event. You look at it and you end it. So it doesn't matter how dramatic it is, like, somebody just cut off my left arm. Still, you need to accept the fact as it is. And as soon as you accept the fact for what it is, you see the plus sides. So, like, I don't know. At least I don't have to give high fives with my left hand anymore, or whatever. Like, there's always a positive sign, a positive thing you can pull from it as soon as you accept it. So, for instance, my parents kicking me out of my flat, I went, well, yes, I lost a lot of money, but I don't have any ties that are locking me down anymore. So obviously it's not the good thing, but it wasn't until I could accept it that I could see the good sides, and that's the whole joy of this mind state. So you can accept anything and everything all the time, so it's very easy to just go with the flow and adapt to the new changes. So if someone so that's basically the dying to yourself. Basically is about ego death. So I'm not too sure if Krishnamurti, as far as I understand the way he's saying it, you should kill the ego off every day, more or less. So everything you accumulated that day then gets ended and put in it, it's over, it's finished, it's accepted, and you moved on into your life as it is. And I don't do this every day, because to me ego death was one big thing. So one big insight, me realizing that my ego wasn't even real, that my ego was just an idea. That was the end of my ego. So it was pretty easy for me to just go well, if it's fake, it's an idea and it's not a real thing in my life, why would I let it impact my life so heavily right now? And then it was over. So yes, sometimes things happen where your ego sort of responds, where you go hey, hang on, you can't do this to me. But that's so arrogant, and it doesn't help at all. Things happen, people steal, people die, and the less you keep your mind occupied with the events, so the sooner you can accept what is and move forward and move on, the easier your life becomes. That's why die to yourself is very, very important. And it's I also think even if you don't completely kill off the ego, die to yourself, I think, is a very, very useful thing to use if something bad happens. So your girlfriend breaks up with you, your mother died, your whatever, and you're super stressed and you're fighting reality. So you're living in conflict with reality. So for instance, she can't be dead. And it's oh, she must have another girlfriend. Or, these are all these responses that we think are us thinking about the situation. But it's not us thinking about the situation, it's us dragging ourselves in a hole. So the shorter period we spend questioning and asking and wondering about, so the shorter time we spend thinking about it, the better we'll feel. So it doesn't matter how dramatic or bad or tragic a situation was, it's as soon as you can accept it, you can move forward with your life. And I know like lots of people are going to say, well, what are you going to do if your child dies? And I am sorry, I am really sorry that there is nothing, like I am sure there's like horrendous tragedies that sound like I'm just going, yeah, whatever, just accept it. There's like, I'm sorry, I can't relate to whatever tragedy you're currently experiencing. But it's just a difference between, do I want to wallow in self-pity, or do I want to take this as a lesson and move forward? So, like, it sounds a little harsh when I'm saying this, because for sure there'll be very personal, very, very heavy things. Like, my friends have the heaviest stories and stuff, and all I can say to them is like, look, I'm sorry this happened to you, but it's not until you accept it. You haven't accepted it. I can see you're not accepting it. I can see the conflict that you're living in with reality and what you want to believe. And it's not until you accept what happened that you can then close a chapter, not close a chapter, but yeah, sort of. Because then you can see that I'm going to grow from this. I'm going to take this as a positive influence on my life. I'm going to, this is making me grow, this is making me stronger, this is making me prevail. And it's not until you accept it that you can move forward. Because otherwise it's just like a distraction, or you're entertaining yourself, or you're hiding it in the shadows. So it's not a pretty answer, it's not the most convenient answer, and it's not like something that people are gonna want to share and sell for money. This is the most humble, most honest, most real human life, like, way you can deal with tragedy. You don't need to make this tragedy define you. You don't need to make your history, what has happened to you, this doesn't have to define your life. It's up to you to accept what happened. And as soon as you accept it, you can move forward. So this is what Krishnamurti means with die to yourself. It's not a suicide pact. It's just, being humble enough to accept what has just happened. That's it. So, yeah, it's hard. Like I've had to accept a lot of things. My mother doesn't love me. My ex-husband didn't love me. Like there's a lot of things that they're not pretty. They're not easy to accept. They're not fun to accept. But as soon as I did, the salvation, the freedom, what I got out of it, to finally be free from this fog in my mind, So the freedom afterwards, it's not fun, but the freedom is so amazing. I feel silly that I need to argue with you. No, so it's just, for me, I was struggling with victimhood, and just being able to feel free from that victimhood, not feel like a victim anymore. That was so valuable to me. So, and obviously life is a lot easier now. I can move on very quickly, and I love hard, and then I'm out and I accept what is, and then next adventure, please. So everything just flows so much easier. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and talk to you soon. One love.